Hi, and welcome to the Corporate Jet Investor podcast. We're absolutely delighted to be joined by Garett Jerde, the founder of JetHQ. Garrett's annoyingly young. He founded his own brokerage at 28, but we're going to start with the early days. Garett, when did you decide you wanted to get into aircraft sales?
Well, it was kind of pushed on me, Alasdair, actually. I went to the University of North Dakota, had the dream of being an airline pilot, flying around the world, and living that lifestyle. When I graduated UND in 2004, that's not really what the airlines look like. You were going to make about $12,000 a year, and you were going to fly a 1900 from, Wichita, Kansas to Newton, Kansas. So my senior year, I was instructing at UND, and I found out about Raytheon Aircraft company at the time, a demo pilot intern program. So I was lucky enough to get an interview for that position, and then I was awarded the internship at Raytheon Aircraft. And it was one of the coolest opportunities. You came into the demo department, you had a week in dispatch where you helped with flight operations, and then you were given a week of flying. So it was either flying the 1900 shuttle to Little Rock, where we had the Hawker facility, or you went out with other demo pilots and you actually gave pilot demos. Myself and Matt Boyd got so lucky because there was also a production test internship, and the production test interns went and took jobs with the airlines. So Matt and myself got to do 1 week flying with demo and 1 week in production test. And that really opened my eyes to corporate aviation and that whole world. So at that point, I really decided this is where I wanted to stay in aviation, in the corporate sales world. And then I did the internship for 6 months. They weren't hiring right out of the internships. Typically that did. So I went out to Arizona and I instructed Chinese and Indian future airline pilots for about 6 months. I built up a fair amount of time in my flying CV. And then I came back to work kind of through Hawker Beechcraft, but I came to work for a company called Range Flyers that just delivered newly made Hawker Beechcraft products all over the world. So I went intern, got to see like the demo side of the world, a little bit of production, did some instructing, and then came back to aircraft deliveries. And that was super awesome experience. I did around the world twice in 8 days delivering airplanes. And that's when I knew I wanted to be in this side of the business. And then did Range Flyers for about 6 months. And then Don Dwyer, owner of Guardian Jet, Brad Hatt of Hatt and Associates, and Sean McGew, knew about me and kind of brought me back in. And that's when I joined in 2006 as a demo pilot. And I was the third Hawker Beechcraft demo pilot to actually be based abroad. I was based in Chester, England, and myself and Aaron Comer were the two international demo pilots. We replaced Rebecca Johnson, who's now the COO of JetHQ. So it's a small world.
Did you just look back and think how lucky you were?
Oh, I'm the luckiest guy on earth. I can fall in anything and I come out smelling pretty clean, but so lucky. The only thing I'll say that, I talk to industry colleagues, my wife, my family about my luck is not being afraid to take any opportunity. A lot of my colleagues in college were just dead set on the airlines or whatever path, they set out on, which tenacity and choosing a path and, having the tenacity to follow through is something more people should have. But keeping your eyes open to other opportunities come while you're on the goal you think you should take, I think one of my main attributes. I can see when there's opportunities and just go grasp it. And that's kind of how I got to JetHQ. So I was a demo pilot based in Chester. I did that job for a whole 6 months. And then a sales opportunity actually came up based out of South Africa. another colleague and I competed for that job, and it was awarded to Chris Hancock, who now is our vice president for the Northeast. And I took over his role selling pistons and the C90 for all of Europe. And, you know, everybody kind of remembers that 2008, 2009 period. It was a pretty good downturn. But I saw the opportunity there again. They gave me a Bonanza, a Baron, and a C90, and Sean, Don, and Brad flew those all over Europe. And my first year, I was able to get Salesman of the Year in kind of the worst market anybody'd ever seen. But nobody was showing up in Europe to sell airplanes. And there was, you know, catastrophic financial crisis, but there was still a lot of people that loved our traditional Bonanza, Baron products we were making forever. And nobody was really following up with them because of the global situation. And I sold 19 airplanes that first year.
Wow. And then did you know, for people who don't know, Hawker was owned by Goldman Sachs and Onyx. So it was basically a private equity play, and it eventually went into Chapter 11. When did you first realize that was going to happen?
Well, it was a fantastic opportunity for me, not great for the company, but we had Brad Hatt and Bill Brown running the business. And then we were acquired by Goldman Sachs and Onyx, and everything started to change. And I could tell something was going on, but it was a perfect time for me to get a little taste of more of a corporate environment. Bill Boyster and Sean Vick took over in the acquisition, and Sean Vick and Bill Boyster are both incredibly smart humans, and they started to change how we were doing business. Beechcraft was traditionally a handshake, kind of everybody just knew we'd been doing it the same way, and those two brought in, you know, real sales training and more of a structure to our business. But you could tell there was a change coming. A lot of the management changed, and it was good for me to learn all that. When I got uncomfortable and kind of learned what Chapter 11 was, because I was 27 years old, was when we started pushing orders on dealers, and I couldn't really answer the questions of the clients and the dealer organization. And that was more on me, just in my being naive 27-year-old selling airplanes. And that's when I could tell there was probably a change coming. And that's when we started, some of the more senior salespeople found other employment, in a nice way to say it. And I was given more and more opportunity. I just felt uncomfortable, Alasdair, not being able to answer questions of people that I was making promises to. So that's when I decided it was time for me to leave. And I resigned. I flew into the MAX Air Show at Vnukovo in Russia. Had a visa issue. I was living in Spain at the time. And I just decided I needed to find another opportunity. And that's when I decided to leave Hawker Beechcraft. And then I moved to New York at that time. And the girl I was dating and I talked about what was next. I interviewed with a couple other OEMs, and then that's how JetHQ was born. Wrote a business plan that really hasn't been looked at since. Moved to Dubai on a one-way ticket and started JetHQ.
Okay. So Dubai then was not what Dubai is now?
No, we, through other relationships like Alan Stanton, and
who's another ex-Hawker sales guy, wasn't he?
Exactly, yeah.
Him to...
Yeah, Alan, who now runs Stanton and Partners, was with Hawker Beechcraft, and he transitioned to Gulfstream. And Alan's a great guy. He said, "Hey, mate, you should come out here and check out Dubai." I'd been there twice, ferrying airplanes, and then once with Hawker Beechcraft as a demo pilot. And so Aaron and I bought one-way tickets to Dubai, lived in the Dira Marriott for a couple weeks and then rented an apartment. And that's how JetHQ was born. Figured out how to establish a company in Dubai. JetHQ was the official first registered aircraft sales company in Dubai with our NOC, and learned all that. And Dubai at the time was not what it is today. But the opportunity was access to end users. Very open market in the UAE, all of the Middle East and India. I could go to a meeting being a 28-year-old with a business card and a cell phone and be received. And that's kind of, I think, in the back of my head, Alasdair, why Dubai to start the company and not the US. The US is just a more established market. You got companies like AbPro and, JetCraft and just bigger companies that were established, been doing it for years. There's really nobody in the Middle East. JetCraft had Sari there. And it was kind of just me and Sari, actually, brokers in Dubai. So it was wild. And we watched we were there almost 5 years. And in those 5 years, it grew so much. And then going back there today, where we still have our established US headquarters, it's a whole different environment. It's also, the barrier to entry there is still pretty good. You can get to end users buying the airplanes. You can find first time buyers that'll jump right into big body corporate aircraft. But yeah, it's changed a lot.
And when did you decide that JetHQ needed to be more than just you?
Took about a year. And Chris Hancock's father actually gave me an awesome piece of advice. He said, figure out what you're good at and do that, and pay somebody else to do everything else. And I quickly learned what I was good at, which is selling, seeing opportunities. What I'm not good at is contracts and research. So about a year and a half in, I hired Peter Walker's son, Kyle Walker, and Nathan DeCock to help me with the research and going out and prospecting for clients. And then shortly after that, Nicola Pike joined us as a contracts administrator. Kind of at the same time, I was able to convince Ted Farid to come out of retirement. Ted is our chairman, and Ted ran Learjet, Cessna, and Hawker Beechcraft. So it was able to get some gray hair and kind of expand out of the region with Ted's oversight and relationships and all that. So it was about a year and a half before I started adding people, before I figured out what I was good at and what I really needed help with.
And Ted was, I remember, before Hawker, I remember, people at Hawker were just in awe of Ted for his sales, weren't they? Yeah,
he's just an amazing, had an amazing career. So Ted did 23 years at Cessna. He left Cessna, joined Learjet, Bombardier Learjet at the time, he joined Learjet, and then Learjet was acquired by Bombardier. He was there for 8 years, and then he did 13 years with Raytheon Aircraft, Hawker Beechcraft. Ted's just got amazing stories, and you should definitely have him on. But Ted was the first corporate aircraft sales in China. He developed the Indian market, the Middle East, you name it. Ted's been there and done a deal, and he can show you a picture of each one.
So that was really good advice. And what are your strengths now? Have they changed, or is it the same thing from when you launched?
I'm learning new skills. Running JetHQ's got 42 employees around the world now, so I still think I'm pretty good at selling airplanes. I'm working really, really hard at vision and processes. As we've grown, we've had to, it's not just me and a couple guys running around. So I'm getting better at those skills, but I still think my number one is selling an airplane.
And is that what you enjoy the most?
It is. It's funny. You kind of go to what you're good at, what you like. So I do really enjoy creating opportunities, delivering airplanes to clients, especially that are new to the market or had a bad experience. Kind of when I started JetHQ, the one part of my business plan that lasted was give the used aircraft market an OEM feel, which a lot of the brokers out there do a fantastic job. But because to get in the aircraft brokerage world, there's no test, there's no certification. It just, if you have, a contact with an airplane, you can be a broker. And we really try and give that OEM feel to clients. We have a process. We went out about a year ago and kind of rated the global brokerage market, and we call it a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 broker. And that's nothing to do with their skills, Alasdair. It's a tier 1 broker has a global team. They have a contracts department. They have a structure. Tier 2 is probably a couple individuals that can sell airplanes, but it's more regional. And then a tier 3 broker, also really good at offering a service, but it's a one person company, going out and doing deals even like locally, right? So giving that tier 1 experience to clients that you can buy an airplane from Dubai and sell it to a guy in Dayton, Ohio, and they feel like they're buying the airplane from Indianapolis. Giving clients the advice they need on the contracts, legal, and really giving people entry into the global market, where a lot of the tier 2 and tier 3 brokers, they're really good at what they do, but it's so centralized to their local market. And a tier 1 broker gives you an opportunity across the world, which is what we're finding is required now because of the amount of people that have entered the corporate aviation world in the last 5 years. There's just not enough airplanes to serve those local markets. If you want a really good King Air 350 to a Global 7500, you can't just say, I want a US registered airplane with 1,500 hours. If that's truly your needs and what you look for, you have to look at the global market. And then you have to choose a partner to help you through that process so you don't make any mistakes, especially how quickly it changes with tariffs and import and everything else, re-registering the airplane, the DAR. At JetHQ, we do that with our eyes blindfolded. A lot of the different brokerages, they won't even look at an airplane out of the UK. And it just opens opportunities for our client base around the world.
Well, it is odd though, isn't it? You're an American, personally you're an American who's chosen to go international first. Usually the brokerages start off with building in the US and then look at international. Do you know why you did that? Was it just because you felt very comfortable because of Hawker, or you liked it, or you more excited?
All of the above. I think for me, it was that Beechcraft experience. Even from the flying, I love flying airplanes. I like flying them a lot more internationally because of the challenge. And that was kind of the start of my flying career was, you trained in the US, you flew around. I thought I would be flying in the US. And then I was flying around the world delivering airplanes. And it just opened up my world to what's out there and different ways to do it. But like in terms of the international market, I find it, I wouldn't say more interesting, but there's a certain level of satisfaction you get, doing a deal from like Dubai to Dayton, as opposed to Dayton to Indianapolis. What you got to overcome in the transaction, the tribal knowledge that JetHQ has got to make that seamless. I do find it a little bit more interesting, but serving clients all over is great. But the international piece is just my personal itch. I love being back home in Idaho, but I really like to travel.
How many tier 1 brokerages are there?
There's very few. And again, there's a bunch of fantastic brokerages around the world, but there's very few that have people on all the continents, or a fair bit of them, that have that in-house legal advice that can really serve you for any situation that arises. So I don't want to say a number, but people can look at it and really see what their needs desire. If that King Air is in that gentleman selling a King Air in anywhere in America, they can probably transact very well within the U.S. It's when the U.S. is not buying that you have to look out to exporting the airplane to Brazil or Mexico or the Far East, that those kind of companies struggle with that.
Do you still fly personally?
I do, Alasdair. I currently own a Beechcraft Premier, which I use for most of my domestic travel, but I still fly about 300 hours a year. And the Premier it helps me sell airplanes because, you can talk about the benefits of corporate aviation and how it is a time machine for clients. But when you show up in your airplane and you live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and you're in, a meeting in New York same day, it's pretty cool to tell that story. So I use my airplane quite a bit. And yeah, it really helps both my lifestyle and for the business. I did the math with our CFO the other day, and I save about 50 days a year that I couldn't do what I do not flying private, just based on airlines and where I live, getting in and out. So, I mean, I try and sell what I'm doing.
That's a fantastic stat. When I started it, I said you're annoying because how old are you now?
I'm 41.
Okay, so you're not under 40, but
yeah.
As well as managing 42 people and still flying yourself, you're also incredibly fit, aren't you?
I do a lot of fitness, Alasdair. Yeah, it's one of my passions. This year, the challenge is running a marathon a month, and just completed the 6th marathon of the year in Missoula, and then just doing one of those a month. And then I do quite a few triathlons. So
yeah, I think the marathon a month is you having a year off, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of lazy, right? The triathlon is really my passion. So I do half Ironmans and full Ironmans, and we have doing California again and Arizona at the end of the year. So yeah, stayed pretty active, pretty fit. We did I'd been doing endurance sports for a while, and then 3 years ago I was introduced to a former Navy SEAL that was trying to raise awareness for veteran and first responder suicide. And we were a large donor. And then Rebecca and myself did 7 marathons on 6 continents in 7 days. We didn't have everything dialed in for Antarctica, but we ran twice in Africa, and we did 7 marathons in 7 days, which was pretty cool. So yes, I'm being lazy this year, doing one a month.
I remember Rebecca telling me that the amount of drugs she was on in there, wasn't she next to the doctor or the nurse who was giving her, getting her to sleep every night? Because that's just exhausting. You're recovering on a plane. Yeah,
it was such a cool experience, but yeah, it was pretty tiring. Rebecca played it right. So we had a 767 flying us around the world, and they laid out mattresses on the seats, and Rebecca found the right seat next to our team doctor. So they were giving us tramadol shots, which is the anti-inflammatory, and Rebecca had all the good stuff. But she crushed the marathon. She's what I aspire to in fitness. But it was weird, Alasdair. I actually got stronger as the race kind of the week continued. How
do you train at the moment? How many miles a week are you running?
Like 50 miles a week was last week. I biked about 150 and then, swam about 4 miles. So as like I prepare for races, the training volume goes up or goes down. But like the great thing about traveling for a living to go sell airplanes is you can always bring a pair of shoes and go for a run and see a city. 2 weeks ago, I had to go to, I was kind of bopping all over. I was in Mexico City, Monterrey, Mexico, back to Mexico City, to Munich, to Nuremberg to show an airplane, then back to Munich, then flew home. And then I did a half Ironman on the Sunday. But you just travel or run on the road and drink a lot of water is kind of my idea.
And you don't, and jet lag, do you have any tips for that?
Oh, I'm just constantly jet lagged, so I don't even notice it anymore. Drink a lot of water, go for a run. It kind of works out. No, I mean, I with all the travel, try and focus on sleeping as much as I can. But one of the best things, and my team hears it all the time about a global business, is there's always somebody to talk to. So if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're in Nuremberg, you can talk to somebody in the U.S. and then you go to bed and we talk to Alvin or Nina in Asia, and Rebecca's on the Central European time zone, or jump on the phone with you. There's always somebody to chat with if you're jet lagged.
And what's the plan? You talked about the strategy. What's going to be the next 5 years?
I think for JetHQ, we're really trying to refine our business. As you talk to any of the brokers around the world, it's developing those future Jahids or Garett Jerdes or Don Dwyers out there. So looking for talent, and then just we're really focused on our process and refining our business, and then technology's coming. So we're spending a lot of capital and time in technology, whether it's AI, tracking markets. We built out what we call the hub, which is our internal proprietary market tracking. And we have a lot of AI in that, and trying to get the best data to share with our customers so they can make the right choices. And then it's looking for talent. And it is a lot of young people are coming into it, but just like myself, they don't even know about the industry. So going to like the JSSI Aviation Summit with Oak and meeting young people and trying to talk to them to get them in the business, and then exploring where technology comes, where it's going, I don't think we know. I didn't get my first cell phone until a freshman in college, and now these kids, my 8-year-old can work my iPhone better than me. I'm trying to stay up on it, but who knows where technology will lead us.
And do you prefer hiring people who can fly, or does that not bother you?
I like it personally. Like our sales team, we have a lot of pilots: Butch Lang, Chris Morales, Chris Hancock, of course Rebecca, and then we're finding a lot of rock stars within our team that don't fly. It's the path I took, so it's pretty easy to find common ground. I do think it gives credibility, like in my case, showing up in my airplane. And when it comes to technical on the flying side, deciding which airplanes, it really helps when you've flown a lot of them, when you're having those conversations. I don't think it's a necessity, but it helps. But the same can be said, Alasdair, from technical background, working in an MRO, sales engineering, knowing the product, whatever people's background, as long as it lends to what they're eventually selling and giving them credibility in that, I think it really, really helps. It's hard to take somebody out of finance and put them to airplanes. They can do the numbers, they can have the economical discussions really well with the end users, comfortable in a boardroom. But when that chief pilot or director of aviation comes in, Sometimes they're on shaky ground. So I think an aviation background certainly helps, but it's not absolutely required.
Who do you think the best salesman you've worked with is? Obviously, apart from yourself.
I'm pretty awesome. Butch Lang on our team, he's been doing it 47 years. You get great advice from him. I mean, Jahid, the Godfather, is pretty good at selling airplanes with Jetcraft. It's hard to argue with him. John Dwyer can move some metal. There's so many great salespeople in our industry, and there's so many great people in the industry. So it's hard to say. I'd put myself right at the top, if not the best, but I'm kind of cocky.
I like that. But is there one thing that everyone's got in common in that list, or is it?
I think so. I think likability is very important when you're selling. You have to gain credibility and trust with anybody you're selling to. And if somebody likes you, it helps. It's not an absolute need, but think of when you walk into any retail store, if somebody comes up and isn't really likable, you're probably not going to buy anything from them. And then the second part of trust comes when you do what you say you're going to do. That's a little bit further on, but if somebody likes you, they're going to hear you out. And then when you do what you say you're going to do, you really build trust with clients. You don't have to have all the answers, but just do what you say you're going to do, and it works out pretty well.
How do you differentiate JetHQ from some of the great brokerages you've mentioned?
Our people, our process, and then being a tier one broker, being around the globe, really differentiates us. When you're looking at an airplane in Singapore and you tell the client that Alvin will be there tomorrow, when weird things pop up with our clients because they're global and they need resources and they need help with different things that can be outside of the aviation realm or tied to it, a lot of it with travel. We sold a Phenom 300 to a very nice businessman in Mexico City. We sold his PC-12, bought him a Phenom 300. And I think Alasdair, where I built the most credibility, he was going to pick up his airplane in Europe. And he said, well, I'm going to bring my wife. What should I do on the way? And I was able to tell him what to do in each city on his stop, from Paris to Alton Rhein, Germany, and then back into Switzerland. And then Rebecca met him. Took him for a very Swiss dinner, and the experience was just topped off. Getting the airplane was pretty low, but his trip across Europe was very high from a gentleman, very well traveled, but out of Mexico, we were able to kind of support him in multiple ways, not just getting him an airplane. I think that sets us apart. We spend a lot of time on how to solve problems, and they're not always just aviation related. How do you do that first trip on your airplane? We delivered another Phenom 300 about a week and a half ago, which was a longtime friend. Did very well in private equity, bought his first airplane with his two partners, and he's like, well, how do we get it? And I was like, well, let me do my job and you'll be flying back to the Hamptons by Friday. So solving problems, I think, sets us apart.
Are there any areas of the world that you're going to put more resource into?
I think Africa's on fire. We're doing a lot of business in Africa. Asia's really coming back. So we're looking to grow in those two parts of the world. And the U.S. is, with bonus depreciation, looking at adding some sales in the U.S., but the whole global market, that's what's so fun about it. When something's down, it's an opportunity to buy. When other parts of the world are doing well, it's a time to sell. So, the whole world. Brazil's been very good for us this year. Latin America. We want to do a better job in each of those markets, and we will add to them.
Are you excited about bonus depreciation?
Yeah, I think it'll be great. You know, the U.S. the last year and a half, 2 years, we've had multiple successful transactions, but I think as a whole, it's been people kind of on the fence, seeing what's going to go on politically, and then bonus depreciation, which is very important for buyers and the economy as a whole, right? The more airplanes we get in, the better the MROs do, the better the management companies, more pilot need, everything. And I do think that bill passing will help boost the U.S. market. In my tenure in this corporate aviation, you know, you see that shift of 70-30, 60-40, 50-50. I don't really think we've seen 50-50, but the U.S. with the infrastructure is a very important market, and I think bonus will help boost it back up.
What's your view on inventorying aircraft, buying them as an investment?
I love it. It's fun. That's where I scratch my itch at risk. But if you can find a good asset, it's where the money's made. As a broker, you're tied to fees, which are fantastic, but the real opportunity is inventorying airplanes, bringing them to the right jurisdiction and selling them. Inventory is another thing that sets different brokers apart, because we can go to our clients and say, this is a good buy. I would buy this if you don't. And sometimes we end up doing it. You know, it's a whole different world. Instead of representing a client to buy an airplane, you're buying it. You're writing the check. I think it gives inventory dealers a leg up on a lot of the other parts of the market, because they're actually putting their capital into an aircraft, and it works really well sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't go as you planned, and I think those are good for businesses. You learn so much when it's actually your airplane and what you're going to do with it and where you're going to move it and what the inspection you need to do on the airplane. And then the same goes on to our clients that we're either acquiring an aircraft or brokering an airplane. We have that knowledge. A big thing in JetHQ's world is we're not a huge fan of the traditional pre-purchase inspection. I think a lot of times, because you're not completing Chapter 5 maintenance items on an aircraft, you're just checking it. So we have so many transactions, and I know our partners around the world run into the same thing, where you have buyer and seller and an MRO, you know, arguing about something that may or may not have been checked anyways. So when we go buy inventory airplanes, we do a very thorough logbook review. We check the engines, and that's about all we check. If there is due maintenance, that's a great thing for a pre-purchase inspection to take part of, because both buyer and seller has to do it, and the buyer takes advantage of that future maintenance. But these long drawn out pre-purchase inspections seem to just hold the aircraft on the ground, and anybody buying an airplane is buying it to use it, not talk about it for 4 months and get frustrated. So we go out and do our inventory purchases in the same way we try and get our clients to do them. And you know, over the last year that we've really been on this soapbox, we've had a lot of good success. The Phenom 300 I mentioned earlier for Andrew and his partners, we bought that out of a 120-month landing gear. We sent somebody out to review the logbooks, and we closed the transaction about a week and a half. It was a total of 2 weeks, and they were flying their airplane. Where a lot of these PPIs, you know, everybody is happy at the beginning. You negotiate a win-win deal on both sides. You put it in an inspection facility, and this is no fault of the MROs. They start looking at things that aren't meant to be looked at per the maintenance manual. And 3 months down the road, not everybody's so happy.
Do you specialize in inventory in bringing aircraft into the US, or is it just purely opportunistic?
Most of the aircraft that meet the KPIs, if you will, to inventory are not in the U.S. It's pretty difficult to buy an airplane at the right price in the United States. So we do specialize in bringing airplanes from abroad, and a lot of times we'll bring them to the U.S. The tariff discussions have brought up new challenges, which I think are opportunities. What airplanes are you looking at? And then if that airplane is subject to tariffs, what other markets is that airplane desired in? And so it's really looking at the globe. Airplanes aren't like houses, they move, right? So buying an airplane in Europe and, you know, knowing your pipeline for it is in Africa and not planning on bringing it to the US is something that just kind of popped up this year, and we've been pretty successful at it. And I know some of our other industry partners are doing the same things.
And there was a great period during COVID where a lot of brokers a lot of dealers were taking aircraft from China and selling them into America. So you can find great opportunities, I guess, if you're prepared to go international.
Yeah, and I think you have to now. There's still the opportunity. We did a couple last year with a large Midwest company where we were changing over their fleet, and we were able to find them the right airplane. Then we take their airplanes on inventory. But those opportunities are more rare now because the typical client, doesn't matter where they are in the world, they want to buy low and sell high. But looking globally, there's opportunities where people need to get out of airplanes. They don't want to mess with a headache, and you have a lot of success. And then now it's just, where do we move that asset to not be subject to tariffs, or where we think we're going to sell it? And that's all stuff, Alasdair, we've learned over time. Buy an airplane in Europe, fly it to the US, do an inspection here, and then sell it back to Europe. So just doing it better, knowing where your client's going to be for that airplane, and not, you know, wasting that very expensive trip over the pond and back for no reason.
Okay, well, let's do some quick fire ones. What advice would you give to a young person who wanted to become a business jet broker?
Find a mentor. Find a good company to work for. Don't be, you know, tunneled into, I want to do this, I want to be a jet broker. You may be a great consultant. There's so many different avenues you can go down. Steve's done a great job showing the world what jet brokerage is. And it's great for some people, but don't be, you know, tunnel vision. I need to go do this. Get a mentor, find out if you like it. It's an awesome industry. And if you do like it, go get it, but start working for a company. A lot of people, because there's not a lot of barriers to entry, just go start, and they struggle. JetHQ, Jetcraft, Guardian, AvPro, the jet business. You know, you can learn the business from somebody, and don't be afraid to work with a great company that has the backbone and the support to help you grow. And then maybe you are doing it on your own or working for one of those great companies throughout.
And what advice would you give to someone looking to buy their first jet?
Get really good representation, like JetHQ. The only thing with how much information's out there, and there's a ton of good information, there's a lot of bad information. Getting a company, engaging them exclusively to go find what you need is something you have to. You know, if you're on controller and scanning through Instagram, and there's just so much advice that may not even pertain to you. We have clients that come to us, they need to buy their first airplane. They're buying a G5, and like, G5 is a great airplane. What is your need? Well, I'm going to go from Sacramento to New Mexico. You don't need a G5. How many people? Well, it's my dog and I. Okay. engaging somebody with the knowledge to help you buy your first airplane and buy the right airplane with a plan to get out of that airplane. Because a lot of people will tell you, I'm going to buy one, I'll keep it forever. I personally went through 3 airplanes. Your business changes, your goals change, your personal life changes. You will get out of that airplane, and getting the right advice on the first one is paramount. And having a plan that for the second airplane, when you buy the first one, is very, very important.
What do you think would have happened if you'd ended up going to an airline?
I would have got fired. I think I would have crushed it and loved it, and it would have been pretty short-lived, as I've matured more or less. I like to be to my own drum. The airline world is as it has to be, is very controlled, and it's a checklist world. I use checklists whenever I fly, but I don't overly like it. So I don't know how long I would have lasted there. And, my idea of the airlines was catch me if you can, jump on a 747, go to dinner in Thailand with a bunch of flight attendants. Like that world they don't really match up. But yeah, I probably would have got fired, Alasdair.
Do you think after 13 years of your own business, you could work for anyone else?
Like I said, I see opportunity. I'm pretty good at it. I can't really see that in my preview right now, but I'd never say never. I'm not above it. I think one thing people make the mistake of is you can always learn. And if, I don't know, that ever happened, I would feel like I would embrace it and learn from those people, and then they'd be working for me soon. But I wouldn't. I think it would be naive to say that you could never do something. That's kind of my fitness regime. I really struggle when people are like, oh, you couldn't do that. You couldn't run a marathon. You couldn't do Ironman. You couldn't do Ultraman. You can't run 100 miles. You can do anything you want. You just have to lean into it and do it. So I don't see it right now, but I could if I needed to.
Have you looked at buying another brokerage or getting in private equity investment or anything like that?
Yeah, we get hit up all the time for investment, and I've thought a lot about it. It could be in the cards. I think you will see some consolidation in the industry, especially when you go through the tiers of brokers. And again, I want to emphasize that tier is not based on how good somebody's at it. It's just their segment of the business. And I can see taking over some tier 3 brokers to get that regional expertise or capitalize on a market. You look at like what JetCraft did with CFS. I think that's a great play. JetCraft is a phenomenal large aircraft broker with heavy focus on that segment, and CFS brought together another segment. I got a lot of friends. I can see some consolidation and some acquisition in JetHQ's future, but it's really important to get the right partner when you're doing that. A lot of people are set in their ways, especially a lot of the companies that you'd want to acquire. And at JetHQ, we do it. We do things different.
Final question.
Okay.
How do you relax?
I run a marathon.
And when you're running, are you thinking about what?
Oh yeah. But like when you're running for like 3 hours or 5 hours or biking for 6 hours, you go through all the processes. But fitness is a great release for me. And then I guess the relaxation, I should say, hang out with my family. I'm long on hobbies, but hanging out with my kiddos is very, very relaxing, even though I make them do lot of physical activity, surfing, skiing, stuff like that.
And are they going to take over JetHQ? I know they're very young, so it's a bit of a lot. It's probably too early to give them that pressure.
Yeah, definitely not pressure. I want them to do whatever makes them happy. It is funny when we fly as a family. My oldest daughter, she turns right. She's got her seat in the airplane. She does her thing. My youngest daughter, aka the honey badger, she's in that right seat and she loves it. So I can see it going either way, but I just want them to be happy. If it's the corporate world, if it's airplanes, that'd be so awesome. But whatever makes them happy. The 8-year-old right now is going to be a lawyer, which I could use on the team, but we'll see what happens.
My daughter used to be a honey badger.
It's the best, right?
And finally, how often do you wake up in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning and go, oh, you're so upbeat, but how often do you have mornings or, you wake up jet lagged and go, I just can't believe I've got more, 20 problems to solve today?
I think every morning you wake up with an opportunity, which some people like to call problems. Very few days does that make me want to go back to bed. But yeah, that, like I said, this business, like most businesses, is about solving problems. But yeah, there is those mornings where you're like, I'm just going back to bed. But I look at each thing like an opportunity, and being on the West Coast time zone, it is fun to wake up and just watch those opportunities go off your desk and, work through it. And, deals are not working out in the morning and they come back by the afternoon, and it's challenging. That's why going back to what I'd recommend is, if you want to be a jet broker, go learn what it is. It's not just, the shot on the door at closing. There is a lot of things you have to overcome, and getting your eyes open to those and really deciding if you like solving problems. Because if you don't like solving problems, aircraft sales is probably not something you want to do. But Alasdair, I enjoy it. Like 99% of the days, it's like, let's go. Let's figure this out.
And on that cheery note, Garett Jerde from JetHQ, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.